Hey guys, welcome to Chef's Notes. We're here today in one of our villas cooking again and going over a dish that was inspired by one of our viewers last week when I went to go check out their Instagram per their request to look at the dishes that she was doing, and I noticed that she had made gnocchi a couple different ways. So I haven't made gnocchi in a while, so this one's for ALS, Aylin Stone. Hopefully you're watching. We are going to make potato gnocchi. And what we're going to start with is the gnocchi that I make are made with potatoes. I like to use russet Idaho potatoes, eggs, egg yolks, and flour. And then I'll put a little bit of salt in the recipe as well in the dough. And then you can mix it with whatever sauce you like. Sometimes I'll make it with squash and sage or tomatoes, or one of my favorites actually is with cheese fonduta with mushrooms and fresh truffles. But today we're going to do it a little different, but we're going to go over making the gnocchi. In general, when I make them at the restaurant, what I like to do with the potatoes is I like to cook them in the skin on beds of salt, rotating them in the oven. And so what happens with that is that the salt absorbs the moisture, the potatoes cook, and they stay nice and dry, which is going to be, if you have to add a lot of flour to your gnocchi, they can be gummy if you're not careful. So I like to do them that way, but we're going to boil them because that takes a lot of time, a lot of salt, a lot of labor, and it's really not necessary. So what you'll need is a tool like this. This is called a potato ricer. You can use this to make mashed potatoes or to strain fruit or vegetables through here. Potato ricer, or if you have a food mill, use a food mill, or even a masher. What you should definitely not do, which I've seen people ask me about, is using a food processor or a blender, which will kind of make the potatoes really gummy and kind of weird. We just have a bowl to mix it in, and this is a sieve or a tammy, which we call in the kitchen a kitchen tammy, and we're going to pass the potatoes through here just to make them a little smoother, nicer, finer texture. This is often used to sift flour, things like that. Or you can put, like I said, fruit purees. If you go from here to here, this will just get a little finer texture. And whenever I'm making gnocchi or even mashed potatoes with potato puree, if I want to take it another step, just to get a silky smooth texture, I'll pass it through here, make sure that there's no clumps, and it's just about a mouthfeel that I like. So what we're gonna do for this one, I did a little differently. I boiled the potatoes just so that you guys can see how to do it, and probably how you would do it at home. So I took the potatoes, I peeled them, just boiled them really gently in some salted water until they're tender. You can see that they're starting to fall apart. Okay, and I have a cake tester, which is a tool like this, and you just kind of want to make sure that the cake tester goes through. Undercooked potatoes are not really pleasant to eat, and they will not make a great gnocchi. So I cook them whole like this to try to cook them and not absorb a lot of water. As I was saying, the way I used to roast them in a pan. So we're just going to take these and strain them. Get all that water out. And then we'll take whatever pieces will fit into this ricer. And we're going to just kind of process that potato that way. Put that in. Make sure that's in there. Okay, and then you just press it through. Comes through this way. And the reason I'm using 3 potatoes is that I have kind of a standard for this recipe that generally hasn't failed me, where I use 3 potatoes to 1 egg yolk. And then, as you can see, it's hot. So if you're wearing gloves like this, it's kind of nice to maybe double up on them so you can handle this without burning yourself. So, like I was saying, 3 potatoes generally to 1 egg yolk. The amount of flour that you're going to use, and I'm going to show you how that's going to work, really varies on the potato and the amount of moisture it has. You want to put enough flour so that the gnocchi hold their shape, don't fall apart, but not so much that it starts to kind of lose its potato flavor and starts to become a little tough and a little gummy. So that's the last of the 3 potatoes. Get the rest of that potato on there. And you can see it when you're doing this, that the potatoes, if you look at the potatoes themselves, there's no shine to them, which will happen if you process them through a Robocoo or a food processor or a blender. And you want a nice, light and fluffy product. Okay? So we're just gonna get rid of this. Okay, so then the next step is you have a clean counter, clean surface. And what you want to do is you want to take this right here and you just pass it through. Now, having a spatula, I think I've showed you guys this little spatula, cake spatula it's called, is really, really a cool tool to have for situations like this. And I always have it with me next to my cutting board. This one's a little flexible. I always have it next to me on my cutting board because I use the square edge to kind of pick up whatever I'm cutting, whether it's herbs or something. I can just kind of scoop it up like that. And it just makes my life easier and keeps my board cleaner. So you want to just run your riced potatoes, kind of press it through here, and this will make sure that you don't have any lumps. And also, you'll see if there's any parts of the potato, hopefully not, that are undercooked. Those will generally not go through. So, but this is actually a nice potato in a sense that it's nice and dry, like I was saying, nice and fluffy. If I were going to make mashed potato or like a potato puree, this is the consistency that I want in the potato because that texture is really appealing, and that dryness and fluffiness will allow the potato to take on the butter that I want to add to it, and the cream or milk, whichever you prefer. I generally prefer to use milk when I'm making a potato puree to get it to the consistency I want, but I'll use butter to make it as unctuous and rich as I'd like. So we pass that all through, just like so. It's really, really simple, okay? But this little extra step really kind of ensures a nice, silky smooth product, especially when you're doing mashed potatoes. But today we're making gnocchi. We can tap that. We can take this, grab the extra, kind of scoop it out of the tammy. Okay, and here we go. A nice little mound of cooked potatoes. This also cools it down slightly. So we're going to take this, put this aside. Now, like I was saying, we have flour. We have salt. We're gonna add a little bit of salt to that. You can add pepper if you want, but I like to just add a little salt to this, and just to keep the color. Well, this is a little pink Himalayan salt. It's got a little pink specks, but just a little salt. Okay, 1 egg yolk. So we're gonna crack this egg. I'm gonna save the yolk. Oh, lost it there. That's okay. So we're going to take this yolk out. Okay. And you could break this ahead of time and mix it with a little water, but really try to just not add any excess moisture. So we're going to break that on top. Okay. Get the excess off your hand and your glove. Okay, that's 1 egg yolk, again, for 3 potatoes. So we have that here. We're gonna grab a little scraper. You can use a plastic scraper if you'd like, because I want to show you the way I mix it in. So we're gonna take some flour. We're gonna take some flour here, sprinkle it on. Let me also mention, I forgot to tell you earlier, I have a pot of water over here simmering, because as we make these, we're gonna want to test them. We're gonna want to test the texture, just to make sure we have the right amount of flour, not too much, so that they hold their shape, but they stay really nice and fluffy. Because what I'm looking for here is a really nice, fluffy little pillow of gnocchi goodness that, you know, it just, you have to eat it and experience it, you know, it's appreciated. So the mixing technique that I use for this, I try not to knead it like I would pasta dough or bread dough, because I don't want to develop any gluten or any gumminess. So to get this going in the beginning, I'm just gonna kind of fold it over and chop it up. Fold up the potatoes. You want to chop it up with the egg yolk and the flour. And this is the way you kind of just start mixing it together. The egg and the flour really just kind of to bind this so you can make this little dumpling, which you're going to simmer in salted water. Now there are different types of gnocchi. Many different types. Some are actually seared and sauteed, which I don't generally do unless I make a different dough. The French style type of gnocchi using pâte choux as a type of dough, which they then put in a piping bag and they kind of cut and pour into boiling water. They dry them out and then they generally sear it from there. Okay, so you're gonna have to do this a few times to really get a feel of the moisture of the dough, where you want it to be. This is pretty cool enough for me to handle with my hands, my fingers, without the gloves. So I'll take those off in a second, but I can tell already it feels wet. It feels a little wet to me. And so I'm gonna wanna add some more flour to dry it up a little bit. And the best way to do is just kind of do this and experiment, take a little piece off and cook it in the water that you have. The water doesn't have to be a rolling boil, it can be at a simmer. And then you'll taste it, and you can taste whether it's gonna hold its shape. If it feels a little loose, you wanna add a little bit more flour to it. So once that we've incorporated this to a decent amount, then I will give it a fold a couple of times like this, but I'm really just kind of pushing it together versus kneading it. We're not trying to develop any of the proteins and the gluten strands. We just want to kind of bring everything together and mix it thoroughly, okay? So here we have that. It's feeling nice. Like I said, those potatoes really cooked up nicely like that. Still feeling a little wet. So I'm gonna take the gloves off, get my hands messy, and really start to feel it. You can feel I can feel it's a little wet. So still a little bit more flour. I'm gonna mix the flour in, okay? And you wanna fold it in. So I would say that a good general guideline for 3 potatoes of 1 egg yolk is start with a cup of flour. And then once you start doing this, do it a couple times, do it a few times, you really get a feel for it. And it's just really relaxing. It's really not that hard to do. Once you get the hang of it, it's just, for me, this is one of the things when it's on the menu, I might let one of the cooks make the dough and I'll go through the process of it and tasting it and make sure that it's the right texture. And when it comes time to rolling them out, it's just like, that's my break. Instead of taking a break, this is my 15 minutes, 20 minutes of time where it's just really relaxing, really soothing. So still a little bit more flour. It shouldn't feel super moist to you. Because it'll stick when you're trying to roll and it's probably not going to be the right texture, okay? You want to get it to the point where it's really not sticking to your hands on its own, okay? And it's starting to feel like that right now. And by carefully doing this, you can also feel the dough become a little bit smoother, okay? So this is where we want it to be. Now we're going to take a little piece and we're going to give it a test before we start rolling the rest of the batch. We want to make sure that, and this is something that I would make this every single day in the restaurants, and every single day I would test it out. I wouldn't be that, arrogant to say, okay, this is where it is and it's good to go. It's like, it's always good to give it a little test. Okay, so you cut off a little piece like this. You want to cover the gnocchi so it doesn't dry out or cool down. And this is where you start to have a little fun, where it's a nice little relaxing little Zen thing. Just kind of flour your hands a little bit, and you just roll it out. Okay? Now, if it's not rolling out, if it's falling apart, then you need to work the dough a little bit more. You know, you need to mix a little bit more flour into it and work it out. But the main goal is to get a dough with a nice consistency, okay, that's nice and smooth, that you can roll, and it's going to come together. And when it's cooked, it's going to be really tender. Not so tender that you can't handle it in the pan with other ingredients, but tender enough that it just kind of melts in your mouth. And it's just, you know, it's delicious. And this is, like I said, this is the style of gnocchi that I like to make. There's lots of styles. A lot of other chefs I've seen want a little bit more bite to it, and that's okay. So what I'll do is I'll roll this out, flour it so it doesn't stick together. Okay, and then I'll cut a few pieces like this. Like I said, I have water, hot water over here. Hot salted water. And we're just gonna take these, we're gonna put them in, and we're gonna see how they taste. Once they start to float is when you know that they're done, okay? So this was just simmering, I just turned it down a little bit. Okay, so let's get that going. While that's testing out, I'm gonna start cooking up some bacon for the sauce I wanna make with this. So I have some bacon cut up. Okay, we're gonna put a little bit of olive oil in there. Just a tiny bit, just to get that bacon going. And as you can see, the gnocchi sank right down. And if you, I'm hoping that you can see that they're starting to come up. When they start to come up is when they're cooked. If you start to see like a lot of, they start to kind of fall apart on the outside too much, or it's almost like they're starting to decompose or so, or dissolve, then you know you need to work them a little harder with a little bit more flour just to kind of get them together. Okay, so we're gonna put a little bacon. We're going to start cooking that bacon down. See, now all the gnocchi have come up. They all came up. I'm going to just take them out, gently take them out. Beautiful little dumplings. Okay. We're going to bring these over to the light so you guys can see them. And I can tell, you know, they're holding their shape, they're not falling apart, but, you know, they are starting to dissolve around the edges. So I just want to taste one. And they're good. They could use a little more flour, and they can be worked a little bit just to make them a little firmer. But they're pretty much there, so I know that this will be my final mix, okay? I'll flip it over. One of the ways I like to mix it in is kind of stick my fingers in there, like this, make the holes so that the flour will penetrate a little easier, okay? I would say, you know, this was full, so that was pretty much a cup of flour. So then, we're going to take this again, fold it over. You know, if this feels moist, you'll feel the moisture. You want it to feel a little bit dry. Fold it over again. Take this, fold it over one more time. You kind of press it together, okay? The potato feels nice and warm. A little bit above room temp and body temp, which is nice. It's feeling less dry, but as I said, that was pretty close to being done. A little more flour, but you'll start to feel it with your hands when you're doing this. You'll feel the amount of moisture, how wet the dough should feel. Okay, and that's about it. So we've got the bacon cooking down. Love that smell. Turn that down a little bit. Now we're not going to roll the entire amount of gnocchi out. We're just going to do enough for a little snack, and I'm going to save the rest for later. Okay. So what I like to do is get a nice rectangular shape like this. Okay, and then I start cutting off almost logs, right? Pieces like that. This will make the rolling a lot easier. Okay, so roll them out this way. A little bit of flour. Okay, and this is the fun part. This is the relaxing part where I just kind of sit back and daydream, think about fishing, like the things I think about when I'm sharpening my knives or rolling gnocchi, making pasta. Fishing, bike riding, all those nice beautiful things you do. And you just kind of roll, and you want there to be enough flour on the board and on your fingers so it doesn't stick, but not so much that it slides, because you want it to roll to get that nice shape. Okay? We'll do one more. Check on the bacon. Bacon's going all right. I'll take it off the heat for a second. Okay, so roll these beautiful gnocchi, and you know it's really, well, here in California today was still 90 degrees out, but in other parts of the country, I was talking to my mom today. She's telling me that it's colder and it's been raining for a couple of days. I wish it would rain here. So the cool weather's coming, and when the cool weather comes, I start to think about these comforting foods, start thinking more about pasta, and I'm going to be playing around a lot more with pasta now that it's getting cooler out. Putting different dishes on the menu that are more fall signatures. Okay, so I think that's good for the demo and for Sam to eat after we're done filming. Right? So you want to put flour on there so it doesn't stick. Right? Then we're going to roll it around again. Okay, roll them around again. Roll them around again. There we go. So then you grab your bench scraper. Make sure that's nice and clean. Put some flour on there. Put a little bit more on top. So it gets in between the little logs. Okay? You want to roll it out. And then you just kind of cut your desired size. That's it. You got these beautiful gnocchi. We're gonna wait a second and get this sauce a little further on, because these, you saw how quick they cook. I mean, they take a matter of 30 seconds at the most, right? So for this sauce, let me get all this off my hands. We're not quite at squash season, but I was thinking of squash, like, those fall and winter squashes. That's why I brought out the sage and the bacon. Okay, we're almost there. Okay, so we have tomatoes. So I have the bacon at this point right here, pretty close. I'm gonna throw some sage in there. Okay, so we're basically gonna make like a sage brown butter, but since we didn't have any squash ready, we're gonna use little tomatoes in there, which is fine. Sage, tomatoes, bacon, yeah. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I'm gonna put a little bit of butter in there. Not a whole lot. Okay. But the butter will be the sauce. So we're going to cut that down. And you want the butter to brown. You really, you want to get it to that point, because the milk solids will cook and they'll become brown and they'll give it a nutty flavor that is delicious. This nutty flavor goes really well with the sage and it goes well with squash. There's lots of different recipes that have that sort of brown butter. A lot of French recipes as well with trout and beurre noisette, which are really nice. So we're going to cook that down. Once we start to see it brown a little bit more, right now you can smell the sage. Guys, I wish you could smell it again. Like the sage smells amazing with the bacon. Okay, that's going. I'm not going to add any salt to this dish because of the bacon. And we're going to put some cheese, but I am going to hit it with some black pepper. Okay. And as soon as this, it's hard to see the brown color because of the color of the pan, but one of the tricks that I found is that when you see the butter start to bubble up like that, when it starts to subside, that's when you know you've gotten to that color and that flavor that you want. Okay, so just a little bit longer. It's like, ooh, butter and bacon. Now, if you had a regular steel pan that you can see the brown bits. I mean, you can go a little further, but that's pretty much where we want to go. So I'm going to throw these tomatoes in there. Okay, give a little toss. Bacon and tomatoes, why not? We're gonna just give a little blister to the tomatoes and kind of let some of the juices come out to create the sauce with the butter. Press that. You can press them down a little bit like so. Oh. Did I get you, Sam? One of the tomatoes squirted our camera. Camera woman extraordinaire, Sam. Sorry about that. Hope it wasn't hot.
Not at all.
All right, that's it. We're going to shut the heat off. We're going to put the gnocchi in the water.
I'm gonna smell so good.
Okay, gnocchi is in the water. Tomatoes are broken up. Okay. You want to be careful not to put too many of the gnocchi in so that they're going to crush each other because they are very delicate. And this is just the way I do them. You can make them a lot more firm by just adding more flour, really working them, but I really like them to be nice, soft little pillows. And not only that, but when you work them more, the more flour that you add, the more flavor you take away from the potato. And I want that potato flavor. Okay? So we have that going. We're going to put a little cheese on top. So now they're all starting to float up. Okay? Take these little guys, put them in the tomatoes. If you have a bigger spoon or bigger skimmer, that'll make your life easier. But I love these guys. I mean, they're cute. They look like little pillows. They melt in your mouth. The bacon is crispy still. It's going to give it a little crunch, a little texture, a little brown butter. But this is really, really a light and simple sauce that's going to just let the other flavors of the potato and the sage and the butter come through. Like I said, and it's fun to make. If you have kids, you can make it with the kids. And I think they'll enjoy kind of mixing and rolling the gnocchi. And then you want to give them a quick little, gentle little toss. Get them coated with that butter, the bacon. We'll give it a taste. I think it's really nice. I love the sage. I love the fresh little pop of the blistered tomato, the bacon. I'll add a little bit more black pepper to this. And then we're just going to sprinkle a little cheese on top of the table. Give it a little toss. You can see all the liquid in here. All the butter that's in there. And then we're just going to plate this up. And you have homemade gnocchi. Try it with different sauces. It's beautiful with meat sauce. Like I said, beautiful with squash and bacon or pancetta and brown butter. I think this is a hefty portion, but my friend will take care of it.
Yes, I will.
Little cheese. And that's it, little gnocchi. And these are little gnocchi. I would almost call these gnocchetti. They're really small. They're really about the size of a fingernail, absolutely. And one of the reasons that I like doing them like that, because they're just different. They look cool. They melt in your mouth. They're small. They're fun to eat. Great with, like I said, squash. Great with peas and bacon if you don't want to go that direction. Nice pop of green pea and bacon. And then you can put a little mince, which is great with peas. Lots of different things you can do with this. Just be careful with the sauce, not overpowering this. If you do it with a bolognese or something like that, it can be kind of heavy for this type of pasta, unless you really make them firm. But that's it. Hope you enjoyed it, guys. Thanks for joining in. Hope to see you next week. Have a great and safe weekend. Bye.